Hello, everybody. I hope y'all are having a wonderful Sunday evening. As promised, I'm about to go live in the next few minutes with Mr. Jason Marsalis in tonight's Conversations in Rhythm podcast. I'm your host, Mr. Larry Q. Drawn Jr., the HNI CEO here at Larry Drawn Music, also the executive director of the North Carolina Jazz Continuum Project. And this is the Conversations in Rhythms podcast. I'm excited out of my mind, and we can get it popping. Y'all give me 1 second. See what that does. All right.
Greetings.
Greetings, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. So,
In the screen here.
everybody, as y'all can see, we have the great Mr. Jason Marsalis. Once again, man, I really appreciate you hopping up here with me.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, yeah. So, we have a few mutual acquaintances. Actually, my brother Ryan Hansler, the pianist,
Yes.
he was, yeah. You know Ryan. He was the one that really connected us. Um, I actually interviewed him a few weeks back, and we had an incredible, conversation about rhythm in jazz, and
Hmm.
uh, and long story short, I went to go check him out at a gig down here in Durham, and
Yeah.
he said it immediately. He was like, "Man," he's like, "Yo, you should holler at Jason because he would be perfect for this." And I've been checking you out for a minute, and yeah, to be able to talk with you about the subject of rhythm, like in
Sure.
music, and
Yeah.
then specifically like in jazz improvisation, like this is a dream come true.
Oh, well, thank you.
Definitely, definitely. So, if you cool with it, can we just jump into some of those questions I shot you?
Yes, absolutely. We can definitely do that.
Brilliant. All right. So the first question. Um, so I've been checking out these different interviews with you, and I saw that you've been playing drums since you were about 3 years old, right?
Yeah. Um, Actually, I got a toy drum set when I
Okay.
was 3. It wasn't a
Okay.
real drum set, it was a toy drum set. I didn't get a real drum set until I was 6 years old. Uh,
Okay.
But I tell you what's interesting, and this is something that I saw about a few years ago. There was a segment that was from, uh, I think it was CBS Sunday Morning with
Hmm.
my older brother Winton,
Uh,
but it was done in like '82. I think it
okay.
was like '82. It was a long time ago. And there's a and there's this part of it, I think '82 or '83 at the latest. But
All
there's
right.
this part of the segment where they're at my folks' place, and
Okay.
we were listening to I think this Thelonious Monk recording, right? And
Uh,
it was Winton, it was Delphio, my father, and me, and I'm like five. And it's interesting because I wasn't playing drums yet, but I'm already motioning that I'm going to be a drummer because
really?
I'm just this little kid just rocking back and forth doing
I'm
this. And I
doing
wasn't
that.
even
Okay.
playing drums yet. So I think that drums was one of those things that I was going to end up doing. So I did get the
Wow.
toy drum set when I was 3, but I got the real set at 6.
It's
And I
6.
think
Okay.
Quentin and Bradford were the ones that got that drum kit.
Well, that's apropos.
Yeah.
Well, what was the first rhythm that you learned?
Um, you know what? I'm gonna say uh, the first ones was the basic ride pattern and the second line bass drum
Wow.
because
So but
yeah, and I say that because there was this recording that I have. It's in the what I call the Marsalis family reel to reel collection, which is a thing.
okay.
And there was a gig that my father did at Snug Harbor, and I think the whole show was recorded. I think Delphio recorded this, but it was the first time that I ever sat in at Snug Harbor with my father, and I was 7 years old.
Okay.
And so, I'm playing this one tune, and so my father and I we start trading fours, and I'm improvising some things. And there's a point where I'm trying to play the second line bass
Uh,
drum, but I had technical limitations. So
yeah, that's
uh,
right. Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like it was like the rhythm is bump 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 pop 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 pop, but it's like I'm playing it like bump 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 pop 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 pop,
Right.
and all of a
Yeah.
sudden the crowd just starts laughing because
Uh,
they know what it is.
right,
But
right, right.
those were the first ones that I had learned.
Wow, that's heavy. So the traditional swing pattern and
Yeah,
then the second line bass drum.
those were the very first ones. Yeah.
That's killing. Um, you said something in an interview that I thought was incredible. It was the one that you were on with the young man, and y'all were discussing the concept of mastery.
Yeah.
And yeah, and you also like juxtaposing, I guess, like the experience in New Orleans versus New York. But you
Hmm.
said something that I thought was fly that I've never heard somebody articulate before, even in the larger conversation about like the African diaspora, which is you said that New Orleans could be thought of as like the northernmost city in the Caribbean.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That,
Many,
that
many.
that's
Yeah. Yeah,
that's
that's something
brilliant.
that has been said throughout the years. There's a lot of
Okay.
people that understand that. If you're in tune with the culture, and
Yeah, I'm tardy to the party.
yeah, oh yeah, no, it's fine.
Uh,
No, it's fine. I'm just letting you know I'm not the first one to say that.
yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Uh-huh,
those who
uh-huh.
know the culture, they understand that. But what it has to do with is the fact that there is influence from Brazil and from Cuba and from the Dominican Republic and from Mexico. From not that that's the Caribbean, but there's these influences from south of the border.
Right.
And so I remember when my father had a performance in Barbados in I think 1985 it was, and he went to Barbados, and after he was in town for like a day, he said to himself, "Oh, now I understand New Orleans." He's like, "I understand New
Wow.
Orleans now from being in
Wow.
Barbados." So yeah,
Okay.
and I mean, and there's traits from Africa that's in those places too. But
Yes.
yeah, but that's what it is. Like if you and I even in fact, I did a state sponsored tour in South America, like
Okay.
places like Ecuador and oh man, where else did we go? It was Ecuador, it was Guatemala, those places, and it was one of those areas. And I looked around
Mhm.
and I was like, man, this architecture is so similar to New Orleans.
Wow.
So yeah, so that's all. There's a lot of influence from the Caribbean, and so that's why it's called the northernmost Caribbean city.
Wow. That's brilliant. That really clarified a lot for me. Hearing you say that, and now getting even greater understanding that scholars and people just a part of that conversation have been saying that for a very long time.
Yeah.
Um. Okay. Well, when you think of your own estimation of like where you hear the beat, do you see that as you hear rhythms primarily behind the beat, like you hear it dead center, or you hear it ahead?
Um, I'm gonna have to say all of the above
Come
because
on.
you have to. It's important to be flexible.
Yes,
That's
yes,
the thing. It's important to be flexible with rhythm. And so, and I've learned that through studying music of other cultures. That's the thing.
hmm
And well, that's one example. I mean, the other example is when you really studied the history of drums, even in American music, you realize, oh, there's different ways drummers play the ride
yes,
cymbal. Just your basic, just that basic thing. You realize that if you hear Papa Joe Jones play it in the 1930s, that's one way. If you hear Papa Joe Jones play it in the 50s, that's another way. If you hear
yeah,
Max Roach play the ride cymbal, that's one way. If you hear Art Blakey play the ride cymbal, that's another way. And on and on and on and on and on and on.
yes, yeah,
Right? Uh,
yeah.
but then when you get into Afro-Cuban music and you
Uh-huh.
really hear how that not only the rhythms they're playing, but how the music is accented, and you
Yes,
realize, okay, there's ways that they don't just play. Uh, No, it's not
Right.
just this straight rhythm.
Right. Yeah.
And there's almost a push and pull. Like some of the notes are
Yes.
a little ahead, some of them are behind.
Yeah.
And when I really got into studying Brazilian samba from
Yes.
Brazil,
Uh-huh.
that's another one.
Yeah.
The different kind of push and pull. They don't like when they play rhythms, like say these 16th notes. They don't play them. No, that doesn't mean anything. It's
Right.
so there's all these different accents. And so
Yes.
as a drummer, you have to be flexible to that. Sometimes you're going to have music where things are behind the beat. Sometimes it's going to be ahead of the beat, and
Mhm.
sometimes it's dead center. And that's with all music because in classical music, for example, a lot of people think that music is straight. Not quite.
Nah, exactly. Yeah,
Not,
yeah, yeah.
there's a way, like for example, like those waltzes. Like the way
Yes.
that the waltzes are actually played, they're not really played. Don't that that don't that. No, it's
Right.
do that that don't that don't
Yeah.
that don't that. It's even in that music.
Yes. Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
flexibility there. So I think that when you see rhythm is flexible, then you can be you can hear it wherever you have to hear it.
Yes. I agree 1,000%. Um, the reason why I phrased the question the way I did was because um, how would you, as a master rhythmist, teach somebody or share with somebody insight on how to overcome like their natural proclivity? You know what I mean? Like you like for example, I know me, right? Whenever I first got started, I heard everything like dead center.
Mm-hmm.
And things that were behind, like I've learned how to play behind, right?
Right.
Um, but it was a process. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And and initially, whereas I could detect that like on a visceral level, I was like, okay, this feel is different. What's going on here? Um, like I said, it was a process, and had I had somebody like you to be like, oh well, that's behind, and here's the concept of playing behind. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
yeah. How would you articulate overcoming your natural tendencies in order to get this type of flexibility that you're talking about?
That's a good one. I think that yeah, that's interesting. I think the first thing would be, I think to understand, I think that really the relationship of people, because
Ah,
here's why I'm going there.
okay.
Because, like, honestly, one of the reasons that some younger musicians have trouble now, and which I've been critical of them, but then I'll also come to their defense at the same time. Now I'm going to come to their defense. Is that
Okay.
unfortunately we've had a generation in popular music where what we've been hearing is computerized music, and you've
Come
been
on.
hearing computerized beats, and so what happens is that the beats are just straight.
Right. Right.
Like folks talk about trap beats, for example.
Right.
Those
Right.
are
Right.
it's like so straight.
Hey,
And
I I can't act like your beatbox ain't together though. that
yeah,
was actually dope.
yeah, I mean I'll check it out, but
Yeah,
I'm just not I'll check it out, but I'm not a fan of it because it's just so straight and it's not flexible.
I concur.
And that's the thing. There's a way to play those rhythms as a human way where it is flexible. The exact same thing. But
Yes.
to be fair, I think that a lot of drummers have been hearing music like that. And so
Uh-huh.
that's why a lot of drummers have the same sound. They're hearing things in the same way.
Yes.
But I think it's important for them to understand, like those are computers, you know,
Yes.
and to get in
It's not a
touch with,
person.
yeah, in touch with that music has a human relationship with people.
Mm.
That's one. Two is to understand that, and this is a process, but say that you have a long road ahead of you because there's
Wow.
music that's all around the world. And
Yes.
I mean, I remember when I was first studying Brazilian samba, which is funny how I got into that actually.
Uh-huh.
But But when I got into that, and I was in my 20s, so the people in the group, there was a group out of New Orleans named Casa Samba. So
Okay.
they knew who I was, and they knew that I was a professional, but that I was serious, and I was so, they understood what was happening. And so
Yeah.
then one of the lead guys, Jorge Alabay, I think he's in San Francisco now. And I
Okay.
remember he told me, yeah, man, it's going to take a long time to learn this. It's going to take a long time. And I remember saying, yeah, you're right. And I agreed with it.
Uh-huh.
And then a year went by, and I said, yeah, he was right.
Come on. Yeah.
So, and what that meant was I had a deeper understanding of what he was saying. I mean, I
Right.
had enough experience to know what he was talking about, but after a year, I had a deeper understanding with how they accented the rhythms because
Yes.
I had
Yeah.
to learn the rhythms first, and that took a while.
Mhm.
Then when you get into how the music is accented, and then you realize all of the music that has been composed, all of the way the music has been played, yeah, then you
Yes.
say, oh, so I think
Yeah.
it's important to understand, like, this is a journey, and you're
Yes.
not going to get this like in 6 weeks or something.
Exactly.
This has to grow and evolve over time.
Yes.
So I think it's very important to understand those things.
Wow.
And then explain, well, you've had different people that interpret these rhythms in different ways for different reasons.
Mm.
And
That's huge.
so I think that those things are important. And then you can get into, well, here's how this drummer plays this. Now try to play it like him. Now, if you
Right.
notice, his sound will merge with your sound. And then after a while, how do you
Mhm.
want to play that? So, but I think it's important for the student to know this is a process. You're
Yes.
not getting this overnight.
I agree. Wow. I agree wholeheartedly because you're right. When you let me say this before I say what I was about to say. See, the way you just described that is how I would is how I remember my dad explaining things to me just in life.
Yeah.
And hearing that from a mentor, hearing that from a teacher, what it does is that it alleviates all the anxiety and all of the impatience that ambition and just the ignorance of youth. You know what I mean? Like it causes you to have. It's like if you can settle in your heart and in your mind early on, like as a young person, okay, this is a process. I have the rest of my life to figure this out. Then it takes out a lot of that frustration whenever you're not getting it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, off the rip. Um, wow. I hope y'all are paying attention, all of the listeners. I just want to take a split second, and I just want to acknowledge everybody that's joining in from around the world. We had some people shout us out from Brazil. Uh,
Hmm.
we have some people that obviously they join us from down there in New Orleans, and various people from around and from around America. Um, thank you so much once again for doing this and
Yeah.
and
Oh, yeah.
jumping.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think I think I see I have a question for Twizzler kid there. I think you're a
All
high school
right.
drummer. You're a high school drummer from Alabama, is that correct? And there's a reason I'm shouting him out, which I'll get
I
into
did.
it. But if
Yeah.
I find out, I'll tell you. There's a reason I'm acknowledging him. But
Okay.
but oh yes, that is you. Okay, all right, yeah. The reason why is that there was a moment. It was a great moment. But it's kind of funny. It shows you how technology is. Uh, I was on this other app.
Uh-huh.
Uh, what is it? TikTok, and I think it was Twizzler that asked me a question, and I said, "All right, well, I'll be live in a minute, so we'll talk about it." And so I'm like live, and we had this conversation literally live. Like we're
That's
on the live,
awesome.
and he's asking me, "Hey man, I'm trying to play this chart." It's like, "Oh, I think I know this tune. Yeah, that's a." And I looked it up. Oh yeah, we're listening to it. I'm like, "Okay, well, here's what you need to do. All right,
Yeah.
don't worry about trying to do this exactly." And we're just having this, and we're like on live.
Yeah.
And so there's some people like, "Wow, this is amazing that you're spending time with the student drummer." So,
Yeah.
but nonetheless, but it was important. So
I did.
anyway, I just had to acknowledge him real quick because any other questions? I know he was starting to play drums with the big band, and so
Uh-huh.
you know, I think there was something he was some things that were more advanced, but I think that Yeah, he'll keep it moving. So,
Uh-huh.
but anyway, I just had to acknowledge him real quick. So, what's your question?
Well, that's killing, man. Shout out to the young buck. I think you said something that was very important earlier. Whenever you said that we have a generation now that has grown up and their primary um, inclination to rhythm has been through electronic drums. And see, I teach elementary school, and seeing that and dealing with that in kids, it's crazy because it's like, dag, like when you think of drums, you don't even think of acoustic drums. Do you understand how wild that is? Like, let me ask you this very
Hmm.
very quickly.
Yeah.
Um, what do you make of? I know you were saying that okay, like the specific genre of like trap beats, like that's because of the quantization, like that's very straight. But what are your thoughts on Jay Dilla and his innovations like with the MPC? Like I didn't even plan on talking to you about that, but we kind of gone down the rabbit hole. What you think about Dilla, man?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I do have some thoughts on Dilla. I think he's from Philly. Is it
It's
James? Yeah, I think
Detroit.
that's his name. Detroit.
Yes,
That's
sir.
correct. You
Uh-huh.
know, and so my thoughts on this, I think that Dilla was someone that was really creative in hip hop and really creative with manipulating the beat. And I think that he has made a contribution there. And it's funny because I think what some guys don't know is that sometimes to play a Dilla beat, it's ironically a mix of straight and the shuffle.
Yes,
I don't
exactly.
know if they know that, but it's a mix of the straight and the shuffle.
Yes.
However, I have to be honest and say that, and this is going to ruffle feathers, but I don't
It
care.
is what it
That
is.
that he's a little overrated, and I'll explain that
Okay.
because what started to happen is in the post 2000 era, you start to get people that are into like their generation, but no other generation previous.
Yeah, that's
So,
problematic. Yeah.
like no other generation.
Yeah.
And I think they got away with it because your average person assumes that, oh yeah, they're going to outgrow that. And I'm saying, I don't think that's going to happen this time.
Uh-huh.
But they get into like this, and then after a while, that's all they're into. And then all of a
Right.
sudden, like Jay Dilla becomes like, yeah, like the drummer we're listening to, or the music or the drum programming that we're checking out. And
Right.
after a while,
Right.
I'm like, I don't know if I really agree with this type of. I mean, definitely check him out, and I think he's creative and great. But
Hmm.
I said, I don't know if I really agree with this. Then I saw this article in I think it was the Los Angeles Times, and it was an editorial that said why Jay Dilla should be celebrated alongside Mozart, Coltrane, and Armstrong. And I said, okay, we've gone too far.
I did. You was ready to throw hands.
We've gone too far. And and here's what's now for context. I have a friend of mine
Okay.
that is into rap for real. Like
Okay.
he
Okay.
knows about it. Like I'm just
Okay.
more like the casual fan that knows the thing here, but he knows about it for real. And
Okay.
so I asked him, like, "Hey man, what are your thoughts on Jay Dilla?" And he said Jay Dilla was cool. I preferred the Ninth Wonder, who's another DJ,
Yeah.
but Jay Dilla was all right. And then I just said to him, like, "Hey man, sometimes the jazz scene can be a cult."
You got it.
So, but I only say
Yeah.
this because I was telling him about all this hype behind Dilla, and he
Right.
was like, oh, "Okay," and it was funny because he didn't really get it. So,
Hmm.
so then sometime afterwards, I think maybe after a year or so, he sends me that article, and I texted him, "Yeah, I've seen this," and he tells me, "Man, this is weird, man. I don't know what the big deal with Dilla is. He's good, but he wasn't really that big of a deal back then. Like, it was interesting. It sort of this. It's an interesting dynamic between musicians and people,
Hmm.
and I think that there's two. He's just a guy that was just into rap and really knows rap, and he's like, what is going on here?
Hmm.
Um, and it was interesting because he just felt, I mean, he's good, but how did this become this huge phenomenon? And I explained to him, like, honestly, I think a lot of that is just more in the jazz scene. And I mean, there's folks in hip
Exactly.
hop too, don't get me wrong. But
Yeah,
I
but
think
no,
that,
you're right. Yeah, the jazz piece. Yeah.
yeah, but I think that, and I think that where he became such a thing, and it's worth checking out. But I think, unfortunately, it came at the sacrifice of everything else.
Right.
And so
There wasn't a
then what you get
balance. Yeah.
are people that like they're only into that and that's what they know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
things before that they just ignore and then they try to throw around the whole like relevant word. Like, well, that older stuff, that's not really relevant anymore, man. Like
Yeah.
Jay Dilla, that's relevant now. And you
Yeah.
know, and of course, I mean that's so but that's my thoughts on it. I think he was very creative.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think that he definitely, influenced the sound. But I think that the post 2000 musician gets so deep into him where they ignore everything else. And I think it ends up being, it's almost like the musical equivalent of what is known in politics as the echo chamber.
Come
It's kind of like,
on.
it's like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, so, but no, I mean, I'm glad you asked because I mean,
Yeah.
I've thought about it. But that's my thoughts on it.
Wow. Well, thank you, and I appreciate that. We just got that exclusively here. You sharing your ideas on Dilla. I I want to throw this at you. I'm curious how this strikes you because when okay, I remember whenever like the Dilla wave got real popular because like what you says, Chris Dave was the cat who um got everybody excited about the use of like you said straight rhythms with the swing or with the shuffle at the
Yeah,
same time.
yeah.
But I would argue that that style of drumming and that whole feel that Dilla's dealing with the machine
Hmm.
is really just an extension of what Errol Garner was doing. Um, you know what I mean? Because like
Yeah,
when you listen,
yeah. I mean, it's flexibility of rhythm. That's the
right?
thing. I mean, that's why I say it's a combination of like a straight beat and a shuffle.
Hmm.
So it's like two things that have been around, and he combines it in his own way.
Right,
And, and,
right.
and but you're right about that because Errol would have that straight do do playing like behind the beat in the right
Yeah,
hand
man.
or the left hand. So yeah, I mean, you've had that. I think that and what you're saying is true. And there's other examples. But I think what happens. Another thing, and this is another post 20th century phenomenon, and
Okay,
I'm not. I think this is really. I think it's because of the internet age.
okay.
But I think it's for a couple of things. I'm not going to blame the music student on this one. Not all the way. Maybe a small percentage, but not all the way. But what started to happen is you started to get people that only knew of music from 2000 on, and then literally nothing else.
Yeah,
Like that's
that's
all they
surprising.
knew. And so that's kind of why even like folks who were into Dilla, I mean, Dilla produced things in the late 90s. But
Hmm.
I think a lot of them, it was 2000 guys that were hyping up Dilla, and then folks jumped on that.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
you get people that only know of post 2000 things. And one of the ironies is, one musician this is where I really noticed it was a
Okay.
musician that meant a lot. Uh, who he meant a lot. I don't know how much music people really knew of him, but it's a musician that unfortunately we lost a few years ago, and I'm referring to the great trumpeter Roy Hargrove.
Come on now. Yeah.
So, and
R.I.P.
I remember
Roy.
the first time I ever heard Roy Hargrove, man, I happened to be in Europe and with Winton hanging out. I was very lucky. It was summer of 1987. Uh,
Wow.
and I'm in Europe, and I think it was the third night I was backstage, and I'm hearing this conversation about this young trumpeter sitting in. I just, okay. And it was Roy Hargrove.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first time. And then the next time I saw him, Roy was a few years after that. Roy was at Berklee College of Music, and he was playing in a band that my brother Delphia was leading. And that was the next time I saw him. And so Roy started recording in 1990 with his first album. Uh, But when we fast forward to the 2000s, what what happened is you have these students that only know about 2000 Hargrove, and
Oh.
that's the RH Factor.
Mm-hmm.
Even though RH Factor, yeah, that was 2000s. RH
Mm-hmm.
Factor, those
Yeah.
albums, and the album Ear Food. And I
Yeah.
mean, Ear Food's a great record.
Yeah.
I mean, those are really good albums. But I noticed that the music students would only know those albums,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of it is, I think, those albums deal with funk, which
Mm.
is great. But then there's all this other music that they don't know,
Right.
and I
Right.
kept running into that over and over and over and over and over.
Mm.
Literally, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I was teaching a drum student a drum lesson, and I think they mentioned somehow the topic of Roy Hargrove came up. I think it might have been drummers they were listening to, and it was somebody that played with Roy. And I said, "Oh, you want to mention Roy Hargrove, huh? What albums have you heard?" And they said, "I've heard RH Factor," and I was like, "Damn it!" I was afraid
Right.
you'd say that. And so it was at my house where the lesson was, and I went and reached over and grabbed these stack of CDs that I
No.
had for a video that I made about this very same point, and I handed the student these CDs to hear, and the student was
Mm-hmm.
looking at these CDs and said, "I don't know any of this,"
Wow.
and yeah, and that's a trend
Mm-hmm.
where you have people that know about Raw Hargrove, but they only know these few records, and then meanwhile there's all this other music they don't know,
They
and
completely missing out on it. Yeah.
so so that's why I call it the Roy Hargrove mission. I'm like, oh, you
Mm.
want to talk about Roy? Oh, you heard this?
Right. Right.
You need to check that out. So, so all I'm saying is that I think you had those that only know of 2000 music, but then there's this other stuff before that they don't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And now some of that, and I'll just say this real quick. In their defense, a lot of it I think is the environment that they've been raised in, because
Yes.
I think a lot of people don't know of the limitations. I would say damage, but we're just going to say limitations that happened when in 1996 the Telecommunications Act was passed,
Okay.
and that was a bill that was signed into law under President Bill Clinton. And what it allowed, really, it was a way for uh, just honestly, the companies that was in telecommunications to get bigger, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what vision he had that Clinton had, because sometimes you'll have a vision of one thing and then it goes somewhere else and you're like,
Yeah.
oops,
Yeah.
that's not what I had in mind. Well, too bad. Should have thought of that. But
Yeah.
anyway, what happened was you started to get companies buying up radio stations.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think Circulus was one and Clear Channel is another, which has changed their name to iHeartRadio because people got on.
Okay.
But what happens is you get this big company that buys like 100 to 150 stations, and then they start programming they start programming the same music that's on
Yeah.
all the time. And so what happens is you have people that don't really know that this is happening until one
Mm-hmm.
day they turn on the radio and say, "Why am I hearing the same stuff? Why does all the music sound the same? What's going on?" And they don't know
Right.
why. And so, but what happens is you get younger people where that's just what they hear.
Mm-hmm.
But then after a while, they get bored and they don't listen to it at all. I think kids do, but I think high school age, they're like, no, boring.
Mm-hmm.
What happens is you have a generation that's hearing a lot of the same music.
Yeah.
However, in previous generations, you would hear different music, and a lot of times you would get exposed to older things
Right.
very informally through who knows what. Like I'll give you an example.
Yes.
I found out from my father that when he was in the service, this is a funny story.
Mm-hmm.
And, he had to go to this stop, and man, every day the radio played the song Tequila. You know,
That's yeah.
Tequila. And he said
Right.
he had to hear that every day, and he hated it. He said,
Okay.
yeah, that and La Bamba. And I died laughing. Now, the reason that was funny to me was because when I was a kid, those songs were popular
Because of the
again.
movie, right? Yeah,
There
the
was the
movie, right?
movie La Bamba, and so
Uh-huh.
we're hearing La Bamba again, the movie about Richie Valens, the guy that
Yeah.
recorded La Bamba, and the song that I found out through a Time Life commercial, Goldies of the 50s. And I said, oh, that's called Tequila. The reason that we didn't know it was called Tequila is because it was known as the Pee Wee Herman.
The Pee Wee Herman. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly. He would do the. Yeah. He
the
would do the
actor,
dance.
the late Paul Rubens, who passed on last year. He would do this just silly dance that was in character, but the
Yeah.
song was Tequila, and it was a '50s song. It was 30 years old. So
Yeah.
what's happening is that you have kids at my age. We were like 10, 11, 12, whatever, and kids knew it, and they
Yeah.
weren't saying things like, "Oh, that's old. Turn that off." No, it was just a song that we knew, and that was it.
Right. Yeah.
And so you would have a lot of that, like older songs, newer songs, or you'd have older TV or television. It was the same way. It was the
Mm-hmm.
very same way. Another funny story was I was in, I don't know, fourth grade or something, and somehow there was a keyboard in the classroom. I don't know why it was there. And
Okay.
so I said, well, I don't really play piano, but I know some notes. Let me see if I can play something. And so I was trying to play the Milt Jackson tune, Bags Groove.
Okay. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, okay, I'm trying to play it, and this kid walks up to me and says, man, that sounds like the theme to The Odd Couple.
Wow.
And I said to myself, he has to be right because I don't think that he knows this song.
Mm-hmm.
So one day I was watching TV and, oh, there's The Odd Couple. Wow, that kid's right. That does sound like Bags Groove. And it
Yeah.
was the theme song. Now, The Odd Couple, I mean, it was a movie in the 60s, but the television show was from the 1970s.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
here you have this kid who's 10 years old, and he knew what it was.
Right.
And he knew the TV show. And there was a lot of older shows that kids would know. But what started to happen was when you get to the 2000s, I think it even started in the 1990s, was that if you're a
Okay.
kid, if you watched television, all you saw were new shows. You didn't
Right.
see new and old. You just saw new. And by 2000s, that was it. Now if you're only watching one channel,
Mm-hmm.
so it's echo chamber time. It's like you're seeing one. So, and I think that there's a parallel in music where you're
Yes.
hearing just one thing and you don't see older shows or hear older music. And so then when it's time to learn older things, you, one, don't want to do it, or two, you feel you don't need to do it because you can get hired and you don't need that. So that started to happen a lot. Now, when it comes to someone like Chris Dave, it was a similar thing. Chris Dave
Mm-hmm.
became a huge hero amongst music students, and I'm sitting there wondering, do they know that Chris Dave played with a band called Mint Condition?
Mint Condition. Yeah.
Do they know what Mint Condition is?
All right.
Do they know that there's a recording of Chris Dave with saxophonist Kenny Garrett? I don't. And so, yeah, there's all that, because, I mean, Chris Dave, he's been out here a minute,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
He's been out here a while.
Mm-hmm.
So, and so I think that you have those when he became successful with his drum heads and, a lot of the hip hop and the stuff he was doing and work with Robert Glasper. And you had a lot of students really into that, which was great.
Mm-hmm.
But very few of them really decided, let me go back and check out what else he's done. That just wasn't happening.
Mm-hmm. I agree totally, and what I'm gleaning from what you're saying to students of really any age group is you can't be blinded by the pride of youth, where you're stuck in just your decade and what's happening within like a 10 to 15 year span of your life. You got to be curious about the birth and the origins of everything. Um, I saw a clip of your older brother Winton,
Oh,
and
yeah.
he said something that I tell my kids all the time, and it's really gotten through to them. And these are elementary school kids.
Yeah.
These are like fourth and fifth graders, and it's caused them to listen to jazz with like the right mindset. He said he was like he was saying, I guess he was saying he was having this conversation with some of his students, and he was reminding them, he was like, y'all, he was like, you do understand that old people are just people that Like the way he said it, it was so simple. It was very easy to overlook. But he was like, um, old people now, if you just back up a little bit, they were young people in that particular era, or you know what I'm saying. So like, if you're listening, the way I got my kids listening to like Count Basie
Yeah.
is I explained to them that if this were like 1930 whatever, like you would think this is hot the same way you think NBA YoungBoy, or you think Drake is hot, or you think
Right.
whoever you think is dope. Count Basie would be the functional equivalent. So let's listen to it through that
Yeah.
lens, and they get it. You know what I mean? Like, could you speak to that idea? Could you?
Yeah. No, that's true. It's ironic you mentioned Winton because 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 let me see how to put this. And this is one of those like really fascinating conversations actually, because I think that I think that's true. I think that a lot of folks like they think about the average person. They listen to music in terms of what the popular thing is at the time, and that's how
Mm,
they think of music is the popular thing that's at the time. Uh, and yeah, I just have to kind of to consider that because when I was a kid, I didn't really care.
hmm
Like meaning it was here's some music from the 20s. Oh, okay.
Right.
I didn't say, oh, turn that off. I don't want to hear that. I never said that. I was like, oh, all right. Here's something from the 50s.
Right.
Okay. This is from the 60s. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Never, I don't want to hear, oh, that's old. No, I never did that. And now there's music that I liked and didn't like, but it was never because of when it was done. Never. And
That's the
so
key.
a lot of people, and the reason why it is that there's a lot of discussion whether jazz is dead or not, and that nonsense, is because a lot of people are looking at it through the lens of pop culture.
Right.
And they think of the 1930s because it was in pop culture.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason
Mm-hmm.
that they don't think of it in terms of the later 60s, it was starting to not become a part of pop culture.
Right.
And then in the 1970s, it was no longer a part of pop culture. And then in the 1980s, when Wynton decides, well, I want to play jazz, the average person is saying, why? What are you doing?
Right.
Why?
Right.
Why? That's music for old people.
Right.
Why are you doing this? And no one stopped to think, well, this is what he wants. Well, let me take that back. Okay. And I say this because when he got signed to CBS Records, they wanted him to
Mm-hmm.
record pop music.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank God that didn't happen.
Right.
But
Right.
that's what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
The reason was there was a trumpeter named Tom Brown. Are you familiar with
Yeah.
Tom
Jamaica
Brown?
the funk. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Tom Brown lives in North Carolina. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Well, Tom Brown had a big hit. Funkin' for Jamaica was a big hit.
Mm-hmm.
1980. So when Columbia signed Wynton, they're thinking he's going to do that. But then
Wow.
when they get the record, they're like, "What is this? What are we going to do with this?"
That's
Because they're thinking, "Oh yeah, we're going to get Herbie Hancock to produce this, and Herbie's making pop records." And then it's like, "Oh,
right.
you forgot Herbie played with Miles in the '60s." Yeah, okay, you forgot that.
Yeah. Plays itself.
And so
Yeah.
that was what Wynton wanted to do. And honestly, that was very controversial and still is because he was very critical of the exploitation going on in pop culture,
Yes.
which many people have still not gotten over that to this day, many years
It'll
later.
be all right.
Yeah, I don't. Some of them won't. Some of them they'll never get over it. They're just going to stay angry forever. I'm like, damn, y'all still whining about that?
All right.
The music has new problems, and y'all still upset over that.
Yeah.
But no, I think about that because ironically, his stance was seen as, oh, this guy's a traditionalist and he's thinking like an old man. Exact quote from Miles Davis. Ironically enough, Miles actually said that. I'm like, wow. And of course, people love Miles because Miles is following pop trends and he's keeping up with pop culture. And I'm like, yeah, you're kind of liking him for the wrong reason. I mean, Miles is definitely one of our great leaders, but do you really know his music? And those who are complaining about Wynton, do you really know his music? And if you don't, please shut up. But anyway, but yeah, like, so I'm saying that to say that, I mean, Wynton's right about that, but it's funny because when he came out playing the music he wanted to play, a lot of people viewed it as, man, and Miles did say, man, he's thinking like an old man. He's too young to think like that. Like, no, that's just
Interesting.
what he believed. And
Mm,
so that's why him deciding to make that move was, at the time, it was controversial. And a lot of
exactly.
the, now the funny thing is, a lot of the opinions he had then, I don't think would be controversial today.
I agree totally because I've gone on like little YouTube binges of just listening, to Winton speak, and I'm just like, wow, like this is apt for right now.
Yeah,
To your point.
because I think and I have to ask him this. I don't know if he would even think about it, but to me, he had what I call the long game criticism, and a lot of folks, it's hard to see that.
Hmm.
Long game is when you're thinking, okay, like for example, okay, when like if you see things that are happening in pop music in the 80s,
Hmm.
and pop music wasn't that bad in the 80s. Now, there were some things that were watered down.
Right, right,
I
right.
think that there were some things but overall, it's not bad.
Yeah, yeah,
So if somebody has a criticism, it can be easy for somebody to just overlook it and say, oh, man, but whatever,
yeah.
man, whatever. It's just easy for somebody to do that. Uh,
Hmm.
but then, like 30 years goes by, and you hear the music on radio, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
What the? But then it lines up with things that was said 30
He
years
was
ago. But that's because,
right the whole time.
like,
Yeah.
but he's thinking long game.
Right.
A lot of folks don't see long game,
Hmm.
because they just give things the benefit of the doubt, or oh man, this is fine. I even read an interview. Now, I even saw a recent clip. Now, this is about politics,
Hmm.
where there was a guy that was serving on the school board, and and there was this woman who was from this organization, Moms for Liberty, which that's a whole other thing. And this guy who was on this board was telling people like, man, look, man, this is a political movement. And that's going to be a problem. And they were
Uh-huh.
like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, okay. Until it was too late.
Yeah.
Then they realized, oh, yeah. But see, that's when you're thinking long game and long
Exactly.
term. And I think that a lot of Clinton's opinions were long term and long
Hmm.
game.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, there's some you'll agree, some you may disagree.
Hmm.
That's fine. But I think a lot of it was long term. And so that's why, he's right. Think about it in terms of what young people are into there, then instead of what my thing is right now. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, but so that's my perspective on that same thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I agree
One,
wholeheartedly.
one last thing that I'm gonna add to that in terms of
Yes,
like young
please.
people, my thing right now. I will always I will always be critical of what happened with pop music in the late 1990s. Always and forever.
Uh, Go ahead, break
Always.
it down.
Ever. I'm never changing that. And I will always argue it every time.
Uh,
And I will never let up
come
because
on.
the easy thing to say is, oh, yeah, things are the same and people have been the same. I mean, I think humans have always been the same. Uh, but the thing about the late 1990s was that was the beginning, for various reasons, of pop music marketed to children. And, and and this can be hard for people to conceptualize
Mm-hmm.
because, like, for instance, like what happened in the late 90s with that what they called the teen pop, the
Yeah,
teen
yeah.
pop bubble with Britney Spears and the Christina Aguilera and the NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys
Hmm.
and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right?
Hmm.
So all of a sudden you have music that's geared to children.
Right,
And
right.
I believe that when you do that, those children grow up and think, oh yeah, we have our music.
Yeah, it's a vacuum. It
Yeah.
creates, a
We don't
vacuum.
need these other people.
Hmm.
However, before then, as kids, you listen to like older newer music from adults, music from grown people.
Right, right.
And in the 80s, another thing that was interesting is that like those artists that were popular were actually around for a while. And so
Yeah,
I remember the like, okay, let's take somebody like Stevie Wonder.
yeah,
Like the first Stevie I remember was when he had that hit song. Those hit songs, I just called to say I love you,
yeah,
Part-Time Lover, and that was the
yeah.
first Stevie
He's
I
a
heard.
perfect example. Uh-huh.
And then eventually I hear 60s Motown Stevie for Once in My Life and Uptown. I'm like, oh, okay. Then I heard Little Stevie Wonder,
Yeah.
Fingertips live. I said, "Oh, okay, all
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
all right." But that's like a generation of music from this one artist.
Exactly.
And so,
Yeah.
same with him, same with Michael Jackson. And so when I talk about music towards children, some people will they'll say things like, they may respond by saying, "Oh, I mean, it's always been about young people. I mean, you had the Jackson Five and you had this." And I'm like, let me ask you something. Marvin Gaye's "What's Going On" was for children?
Right. It's like, yeah. What are you
Was
thinking?
that for kids?
Right.
And
Yeah.
adults listen to that? Is that what happened?
Yeah.
A song where Motown got scared because he was talking about police brutality and the Vietnam War, and
One.
that was for children?
Right. That was for kids. Yeah. That don't make no sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but young people, okay, because that's 20s, 30, all right.
Yeah.
But in the late 90s, you had music for children.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it led into a generation that thought we have our thing, we have our music.
Yes.
Because they weren't hearing older, like if you were following pop culture, you weren't hearing a lot of older artists.
Right.
Because in the 1980s, you would have, man, all ages. You'd have everything from Michael Jackson and Prince to Aretha Franklin having hit records, to George
Exactly. Yeah.
Harrison having a hit, to the
Mhm.
Beach Boys having a hit, to
Yeah.
artists like Tiffany and Debbie Gibson, that was teen pop music in the 80s.
Right.
And now, one gentleman just made a video on TikTok, and I have to respond to it. And he made a point that I didn't really consider. And he was
Okay.
saying, and he was talking about how he was grateful to have heard jazz as a kid. And one thing that he said about the late 90s was that it was the first time that you started having young female teen stars.
Okay.
And I said, huh. Because
Yeah, that's an interesting.
historically, you hadn't really had, like, there was the Little Stevie Wonder and there was Michael Jackson, but it wasn't. I mean, I think the closest I can think of, I mean, there was Annette Funicello back in the day,
Uh-huh.
and that, but Annette Funicello, she didn't start wearing bikinis until she got in her 20s. Yeah, I'm just saying. Like,
Yeah.
she wasn't doing that on the Mickey Mouse Club then. Not that.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
But he made an interesting point, because what happened was you had these young women that were dressing like grown women, with like bare midriffs and these tight clothes, and Debbie Gibson was asked about that, and she said, "Man, in the 80s, we couldn't wear what these girls is wearing now.
Exactly.
Right? We couldn't
Different
do that."
time. Yeah.
So I think that's another like subtle sexual exploitation thing
Mm-hmm.
that's going on, along with when you hear pop music, you're only seeing and hearing young people. You're not seeing any older people, or any, like, there's like no adults in the room. So I think that environment causes the young people that are only into their new thing, and that's it.
I agree totally. And holistically, what I glean from that is you're giving wisdom on the barriers that this present generation and the limitations that this present generation is having to deal with in order to delve deeper into the music and the lineage, the great lineage of music that's come before them. Like you're outlining and you're targeting like the specific things that they have to recognize and then break free from, which is necessary in any artist's development. It's funny, man, that you're saying that you said that the late '90s, like with the music aimed for teenagers or aimed at kids, because in another interview I was listening to Branford, and Branford brought out the point that the '50s was the first time. What I'm hearing is your commentary being an extension of what Branford said that happened in the '50s. Because with rock and roll, like that was aimed at kids, and it literally changed the landscape of American popular music. Whereas before it could be argued it was high art. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No,
I just wanted to throw
don't
that at you.
apologize. No,
No.
no, he's right. And I've been thinking about this too. Because
Okay.
there was an interview that I saw with an artist, uh, and this artist was asked, why is it that jazz isn't cool with young listeners? And
Mm.
they gave this weird, convoluted answer, honestly. Um,
Uh-huh.
it,
Uh-huh.
it was, and some of it was inaccurate. I mean, there was some truth inside of what was said, but there were some inaccuracies.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to leave it at that.
There we go.
Uh, yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that. But I thought about it. I said, that was a good question. That answer was convoluted. But when I thought about it, and I realized a lot of people look at okay, when they talk about like jazz not being cool with young people, and a lot of people go to the 1940s and when the bebop era started with musicians such as Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie and how those guys weren't playing for dancers.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't playing for dancing. It became more about the art of the music.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that you need to look at the 1950s
Come
because
on.
the 50s was where you had this dividing, you had almost like a line was drawn because in the 1950s, that was when you had rock and roll like Little Richard and Elvis Presley and Chuck Berry and Jerry Lee Lewis and Buddy Holly, and that was music for young people. But it wasn't just children; it was like children, teenagers, kids in college, and so I think that was the start of jazz, like the reputation of jazz not being for young people. Because I mean, I even saw in the recent documentary on PBS of the great drummer Max Roach. It was an interview with Harry Belafonte where he talks about him and Marlon Brando. Man, we were going to hang out and check out Clifford Mack. You're not hearing about young people going to the clubs, and, if they were in LA or if they were in New York or wherever they were. Like, you don't really hear about young people going to that. You're hearing about grown people, adults, and being to hang and and sometimes, you had places where young people couldn't go anyway because it might have been a bar or something like that. You have that. But even somebody like Ella Fitzgerald, like there's a famous story about Marilyn Monroe being in Ella Fitzgerald. And yeah, that's a whole other thing. I mean, I don't have time to get into that. But nonetheless, you have, but I think the 50s was, I think, the first like dividing line. In fact, there's a scene in one of the Elvis Presley movies, Jailhouse Rock. It's a cringy scene, but it's worth watching. Where Elvis is trying to go out with this girl, and I think he goes to her parents and meets her parents, and there's this party. She's like, "Yeah, there's this party," and okay, everybody, of course, everybody's white, but then they're like, "Yeah, listen to this new record," and they put on this record, and it's a jazz record. However, it's like, I think it's like Chet Baker and like Jerry Mulligan. So I'm like, okay, so this is going to be all white. All right. And it was. The whole scene, they're talking about, oh, this is the new music. And have you heard the latest from Lenny Tristano? Oh, it's the outer space. Oh, I think they're going to go to traditional. I can't even do it. It's so cringy, honestly.
That's funny.
But I think it's interesting to see because that is one of the early examples of the music being associated with rich people and the music being associated with adults. And then Elvis is frowning on the whole thing. He says, "What do you think, kid?" And he says, "I don't know what you're talking about." And he storms out and leaves. So it's like a dividing line.
Yeah,
like, yeah, that's what the adults are into, but the hip music is with these kids over here. And I think that there's been many examples of like a dividing line. And two more that I can think of was when another example that I have of that is in the 1960s. Miles Davis recorded a concert at Philharmonic Hall, which produced two of his greatest live albums of all time, My Funny Valentine and Foreign More. 1964. I think that's like Miles' greatest live album and the greatest of modern trumpet of all time. 3 nights earlier, also in New York City, the Ed Sullivan Show is on, and Ed Sullivan says, "Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles."
Yeah.
3 nights earlier. And so that's another line. So young people, they're not going to be listening to Four More. No. They're going to be listening to the Beatles and singing along and dancing And there's one story I heard that was funny. You had this young 16-year-old girl screaming at the Beatles, and her mother slapped her. And I was told, well, the mama only did that because she used to be in the Frank Sinatra, you know.
That's fun.
So yeah, but it was a dividing line.
Yes.
And I think that subsequently the music, young people just weren't checking it out. And I think it became a status quo thing, like, well, just young people aren't really into that. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why when someone like Wynton Marsalis emerged, the reaction was, what are you doing? Like,
yeah, such an anomaly.
Yeah, like, why do you want to do this?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was even a story I heard, I think I heard this from my father, where there was some gig, when some performance, Wynton was on, and there was like a producer handling the event, and then the producer sees Wynton and says, "Hey, what's this kid doing here? Why is this kid here?" Because this is like 1980. It's like a long time ago.
Yeah.
And they're like, "What is this kid doing here?" Because the music was seen as for an older crowd, for an older audience, 40, 50, 19, no.
Mm-hmm.
And then the fact that he wanted to play it, they're like, "Why do you want to do this? What are you doing? You're playing old music." Well, but of course, what I later realized, a lot of those folks that said that, oh, he's this traditionalist playing old music, they never heard his music. They just judged the book by its cover. They just looked at the fact that you had this black guy who was being articulate and wearing a suit and wanting to respect the music, and you have people that are going to hate that. And then he's like outspoken against what he feels is a lack of excellence and dumbing down the music, and people are like, "Will you please shut up? This is annoying."
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Like they're going to be just like. But I'm just saying, like, that's the dynamic. But I think that so. But yeah, I think back to that point. That's why when folks saw these young people playing the music, it was like, "What are they? Why are they?" Because I think there was a status quo that, oh, this is music for older people, and the fact that you had a generation that came up with young guys wanting to play the music, and you had some people who disagreed with that, thinking like, why you should do something with pop music? Like, what are you doing? So, but yeah, that's my thoughts on that. But yeah, but Bradford's point though, he's right, because the '50s was the first sort of dividing line.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that first wave. On the subject of rhythm and Miles Davis specifically, right?
Yeah.
First off, I've been really enjoying not only your commentary tonight on Miles, but in other interviews I've been digging, like in preparation for this. I wanna throw this at you and see how this strikes you. One of the things that I really love about Miles, period, is his rhythmic concept. I feel like and I think that his like the hipness was in his he was in his evolution of rhythmic concept. There's a certain way he's getting to his eighth notes that's different in 1940, on those recordings with Bird, than whenever he's on top of, what Tony's doing, and then even going into the 80s. Yeah. And I saw an interview with him on Arsenio Hall in the 80s, and he was and he was talking about the beat within the beat. And he was shouting out his drummer who, was from DC and helped pioneer like the whole go-go sound.
Yeah.
And the point he was making to that young man was, he was saying, yeah, that's cool. You're dealing with that Chuck Brown go-go thing. But the real secret to this rhythmic thing is there's got to be a beat in between the beat. Basically, if we were to just get mathematical about it, you got quarter notes, but then the eighth note, that eighth note, that and is the beat in between the beats.
Right.
And like what you were saying earlier with the different drummers that you mentioned with their cymbal feel, you talked about how Max has a different beat within the beat that's different. You know what I'm saying? It's different from Papa Joe. And then even you mentioned how somebody like Papa Joe, you listen to his cymbal sound in the 30s, how it's different whenever you jump up to the 50s. My question to you is, in hearing Miles, like with his rhythmic concept, how would you describe like his rhythmic, I guess, elasticity over the years? And then, like, is there a drummer, after you talk about Miles, like, is there a drummer who has done the same thing who you've been inspired by?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as far as drummers, I mean, I've been inspired by all of them, to be honest with you. I mean, I check all of them out. Even if they're not my favorite, I'm still going to check them out
Uh,
and be aware of what they've done. But Miles, I think the first thing that I have to say is that, and I think this ties in with everything, Miles was a master at presentation.
okay.
That's very important because I think
Mm-hmm.
it ties into everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I think that it tied into all of it. I'll just take a quick sidebar. I'll get into Miles's rhythm in a minute, but man,
Yes.
I remember when I was at this radio station, WWOZ,
Okay.
and this was like in the 1990s, WWOZ in New Orleans, and this is when they were in Armstrong Park. They've moved again, but they had this vinyl, and so I'm just looking, and oh, Miles Ahead. Oh yeah, I remember. Whoa, what? The original cover, you may know this, but to those
Mm-hmm.
who don't, the original
Mm-hmm.
cover of Miles Ahead had a white woman on a boat. And I was like, what the? I was in utter shock. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember Delphia was there. I was like, look at Delphia. We were both stunned. Like, what the? We never saw that. Because
Yeah.
the album Miles Ahead I think it was the first album with Gil Evans, Miles Plus 19. And the cover that we know is the one where he's playing, he's got his like green on it, and he's
Yeah.
got horn and other things. I'm forgetting all the color schemes.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I never saw that.
Uh-huh.
And then later I put two and two together, like, oh, that's why we have the cover to Someday My Prince Will Come.
Mm-hmm.
Someday My Prince Will Come had his wife Frances Davis on the cover. And
Mm-hmm.
Frances told a story, and I heard this on the Miles Davis radio project, which for those who aren't familiar, Google that. That was some wild radio. Good Lord. It was great. It was a radio documentary on Miles. It was crazy.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, Frances Davis said, man, Miles wasn't there at the photo shoot, but he was. Because he was on the phone like every 10 minutes. That phone would be ringing. Miles like, oh, it's got to be like this. Got to be like that. Miles would be on the phone like
Yeah.
every 10 to 15 minutes calling, man, it's got to be like this. It's got to be. And I only bring that up because I said, okay, yeah, he's about presentation. Because you have some
Mm-hmm.
guys, man, they don't care what's on the cover of a record, whatever.
Right.
Not Miles. That was important. And
Mm-hmm.
so that tied in with the music. That's why, if you notice, that's why a lot of guys reference his albums for learning tunes. And sometimes that's not a good idea because sometimes those tunes wouldn't be correct, or
Okay.
it's Miles's view and not how it was originally played.
Uh-huh.
But it's because Miles was a master at presentation. He knew how to organize rhythm sections, and he knew how to like organize the band. He knew how to organize the music. That's the
Mm-hmm.
thing. It's all presentation, all of it. And that's the thing. And and he had a look, obviously, and I even heard, I mean, he was like, I mean, Miles even had his own logo, that insignia where he's like leaning.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a black, like, well, Sketches of Spade has it. And other
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
records.
That
You
was
see
the
that
first
logo.
Jordan symbol. Wow.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I mean, but I'm saying, like, Miles was great at presentation.
Yeah.
And so it would
Wow.
make sense that he's thinking about rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and this is one of those things that I did hear Miles Davis saying in an interview, and it made it, I understood it, but I understood it more and more and more the older I got. And what
Okay.
Miles said, yeah, when you hear guys playing, they play, don't do nothing. This is flat, don't do nothing. But when you hear, he's explaining the use of space, and I say, yeah, that's a good point. But I think that that's something that he understood. Now, what you're talking about, the beat between the beat, is really how are you playing the shuffle?
Yes.
So that's the thing.
Yes.
How are you playing the shuffle? And the thing is that bebop was a broken shuffle. That's all it was.
Mm-hmm.
So in the old days, musicians would play shuffle. After a while, the bebop would start playing bop 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 bop. That's what the piano would do.
Yeah.
And instead of the drummers playing in the left hand, breaking that up, it was just a
Yeah.
broken up shuffle.
Yeah.
And then you get musicians that interpret that in different ways. But still, I think what he's talking about is how are you playing the shuffle? And there's different ways you can do that. I mean, even when drummers played funk, they understood the shuffle. So even when you would hear, like Bill Withers' music is a good example of
Yes.
this. His big hit, Ain't No Sunshine, where the drummer plays with a stick and a brush. I didn't know that for years.
Okay. Okay.
But it's like if you take, and you just change,
Yeah.
slow it down. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. This is the right hand. The right hand is playing a shuffle.
That's good.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah, it's how do you interpret the shuffle? And there's many ways to do it. You can do it more swung. You can do it straight. There's a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for that because by saying the word shuffle, it covers so much. Yeah.
Yes, it
Wow.
does.
Wow.
To be honest, one of the reasons that I'm more into, say, hip hop from the 1990s more so than hip hop later was really because of the shuffle.
The shuffle. Come on,
You know,
man.
that's the thing. Like if you take if you take any Tribe Called Quest song, you hear that shuffle.
Yes.
Like the very beginning of the record, what is it, Midnight Marauders, when the late Fife Dog comes in. Linden Boulevard, represent, Tribe Called Quest, represent. When the mic is in my hand, my favorite beat back in the day was Eric B for President. That's a shuffle. That's
Right.
a shuffle. You hear, and there was
Come
another
on.
section where it was like it was Q-Tip and the DJ. I forget the words, but
But yeah,
that's a
that
shuffle.
shuffle rhythm.
Yeah, that's a
Exactly.
shuffle. And so hip hop had more of that before it became like really straight. And
I concur.
I'm just not. You can do it, but it's not. I prefer the shuffle. It's got that groove. The music is moving.
Well,
And,
well,
so
while you're on that tip, I agree that hip hop nowadays the production is like super straight. But what do you think of these new rapping patterns that are triplet based? Because cats, I was actually telling my teacher at North Carolina Central, Thomas Taylor, I was like, man,
yeah, I know Tommy.
like yeah, that's family.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we were talking about that. We were talking about like and once again, I agree wholeheartedly that the content is terrible, right? It's destroying our communities, the message, da da da. But the rhythmic innovation, the way that these cats are dealing with these triplets, man, is what do you think about that?
Yeah. One thing is that nowadays, I will say this. When you talk about the content, it depends on the rap that you're hearing. I'll admit a lot of the mainstream rap on mainstream radio is not that great.
Yeah,
But then at the same time, there's all this other rap that you never hear on the radio that's actually amazing.
it's actually good. Yeah.
Where I'm like, damn, why don't we hear this on the radio? Damn it. Like, so it depends on that. But yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, they have used triplets, but it depends on how you do it.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the thing. Because sometimes the content's not that great. Sometimes it is. But you're right. Like there are ways that they use triplets. That is creative. There are rhythmic aspects to what is done in hip hop that is creative. But like I said, it just depends on how it's done. Sometimes it's done where it's great. Sometimes it's not so great. It just depends.
Right.
But yeah, I mean they've used that. And sometimes something that may not be great in one instance is better in another. It's like,
Yes.
oh, okay. Well, over here, this concept is great. So yeah. So I think that's the answer I would have for it. It just depends on the music and what's going on. I think there is creative rhythm, but also depends how it's done, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. You were you you said that you would talk about Miles's rhythm, and then you would go back and you would talk about drummers that influenced you. Who are some of your main cats? I mean, obviously, like whenever I listen to you, I have my own estimation, but to hear it from you would be incredible. Like who are some of your
Yeah,
like pillars?
the first ones before, as I like to say, just all hell broke loose.
Uh,
Yeah,
uh,
the first ones was I would say uh, Art Blakey, Max
okay.
Roach, and Philly Joe Jones.
Wow.
Those are the first ones.
First ones.
Like I mean,
So so what did you get specifically like from each one? Like what'd you get
yeah,
from, yeah, what'd you get from art?
I think it was more about. Honestly, I think it was more in there. If I had to be honest, looking back, I mean, I love the music. I think it was more their solos. Just the ideas
Okay.
that they would play would stand out.
Hmm.
You know, like I remember once, I think it was Delphia was playing me this record. Hey man, who is this on drums? I don't.
Uh,
I was probably 7 years old. It was a long time ago.
uh,
So I was listening, and I was like, man, it sounds like Philly Joe Jones. And all of a sudden, I heard oh, that's Philly Joe. Yeah,
uh, yeah.
the record was Sonny Rollins' "Duke's Time," which is incredible.
Okay.
But I think it was the solos. Like when I heard certain things, I know, oh yeah, that's them. Yeah, yeah. I
Mm.
think it was more that.
Hmm.
I think the art of their pride symbol that was a little
That
later,
was a
but
little bit
I
later.
think it was
Yeah.
more like their solos and what they were playing.
Mm.
But those are the first that I really heard. The first drummer that I seriously studied extensively was Jeff Tain
I
Watts.
knew it. I knew it. Uh-huh.
I mean, I always
I can
heard
hear
Tain.
it.
Yeah, I always heard Tain as a kid. Of
Uh-huh.
course, him working with my brothers. But there came a
Yeah.
point I said, you know what? I want to get deep into what he's doing
Yeah.
because there's a
Yes.
lot going on here, and it based on his soloing
Hmm.
and sometimes accompaniment. But I said, this is some things he's doing. I want to get into this and learn. And so
Yes.
I was really into him. He was the first one that I really seriously studied. I mean, if you listen at the way that I'm playing on Delphio's first record, Pontius Pilot's Decision, I mean,
Yeah.
that's
That's
some of the great
all
ideas.
Tane, Jack.
Yeah. And I mean, it's crazy. There's a tune where it's me and Tane playing together, which was wild.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. It's called Simon's Journey. There's a drum solo, and it's me and Tane
That's you and
going at it. Yeah, it's
yeah,
wild.
I got to go back.
It's so
Yeah,
wild.
I got to investigate.
Yeah.
Well,
But anyway, that was the first one that I extensively studied. And then I would, I, I I remember the next drummer that I really noticed. Sadly, he passed away when I really started to pay attention to him was Ed Blackwell.
mm,
You know, and I was like, man, his sound is just, you know, like this, like his sound is like really like that's just such a. I didn't really know how to describe it, but I think I was on the phone with Winton once, and we were talking about Blackwell, and he was saying things that I was agreeing with. He was filling a lot of a lot of blanks, saying,
mm,
"Yeah, man, he's got that African sound." I said, "That's it.
ah,
Yeah,
ah,
yeah, you're right about yeah." So, but I think Blackwell was next, and I think after that, that's when it just started to go all over the place, like. I remember, I think Jeff Tain Watts was asking me. No, I was getting together with Tain, and Tain asked me, "Man, you ought to check out some Papa Joe Jones." And it was right at the point where I was thinking about listening to Papa Joe Jones. I'm like, "Man, you're right about that." So I started doing that, and see, by that point, then it's like all over the place. You know, it's like I'm listening to Frankie Dunlop, or I'm listening to Danny Richmond, or I'm discovering that 1970s fusion was different from the 1980s. So now I'm listening to Lenny White with Return Forever, or
uh-huh,
and
uh-huh.
then it leads to that's what I mean. Then it's all over. And then there's drummers that I'm not as like the biggest fan, but I'm still going to check them out,
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
Dave Weckl with the Electric Band, which
Yeah,
I
yeah,
need to
yeah.
revisit some of that.
Uh-huh.
I need to revisit some of that music because I mean, like I wasn't as into Weckl, played his
Hmm.
ass off. There's
Yeah,
no question about that.
yeah,
His
yeah,
technique
yeah,
was
yeah,
unbelievable.
exactly, yeah.
I mean, that was stuff I couldn't do, but I would still check him out. So that's what I
Uh-huh.
mean by that point. It was like just check. Then it's like you get to a point where you're just like listening to whoever. Then it's like, whose drums on this James Brown record? Oh, no, John Jabo Star. Okay,
Yeah.
And then I met him years later and freaked out.
You talk about so you met Jabo Starks?
Yeah, I was at Snug Harbor. This is like
How did
early
that
2000s.
go?
I was in Snug Harbor, and I'm like at the computer. This is like, I would have loved to have gotten a video of the reaction of this, where I'm at the computer. It's after the gig, it's over, and I was, I don't know, on the computer playing cards. And I hear this older voice, Jason, yeah, John Starks. John, Jabo Starks? Yeah. And I leaped out of the chair. Hey, man, what's going on? Because my first thought was, it's not the basketball player for the Knicks. I don't think it's him.
Right.
And I was like, so, but it was at a point where I knew who John Starks was. He was on those crucial James Brown sides from the early 70s when Bootsy Collins and his brother Catfish was in the band, and so and Clyde Stubblefield was another drummer. I knew who he was, and I flipped out. Man, what's going on, man? How you doing? You know, it was like drummer celebrity moment.
Yeah.
You know, and he was super cool, you know, and I had to let him know, hey, man, I got to let you know that Love, Power, and Peace is an unbelievable record.
Yes.
That record blew my mind when I first heard that. Yeah. And he told me, man, he was glad to hear that. He said, man, boy, that groove would get so strong. It was scary. I'm like, I'm sure it was.
Come on.
Because I remember in high school, I think it was a James Brown Star Time box set. And I was like checking out the grooves. And I remember when that Love Power, I didn't know what the album was, but it was the first few tunes from that live concert came on. And I said, what the hell? What album is that? My God. Because it's so alive and it's so strong. I'm like, what? I got to practice. What? So that's what I mean. Like high school, it was just anything by that point. And so, you know, and then there's other drummers. Like I was fortunate enough to study with Alan Dawson. But then in high school, I got deeper into Alan Dawson's drumming.
So hang on. So you were like in person with Mr. Dawson, a part of his studio.
Well, yes, but in this way, the first time was a lesson that was set up by Delphio.
Okay.
I went to Berkeley College of Music, and this was wild because I'm like this 8-year-old kid. I'm about to turn 9 in a few months, but I'm kind of not necessarily acting like not that I was acting like a college student, but I was like hanging out. Not anything bad but just staying up all late. You know. You know, one night, Delphio tells me, yeah, man, there's this place. I don't know if we can get you in, but this place called Wally's. All right. I'm playing at Wally's at 1 a.m. And I'm way underage. I'm like, man, what the? But I was all in. Yeah. That's the thing. I loved the music. I was not affected by anything. But I remember we're in the car while I'm in Boston, and Delphio's all proud and tells me, you're going to have a lesson with Alan Dawson.
Wow.
Okay.
Right.
I don't know who he is. And then then he tells me, you taught Tony Williams. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. I knew who Tony Williams was. And so what happened with Dawson was I had a lesson when I was 8, which I don't remember well, to be honest. But I did have a few more lessons when I got older. And there's actually cassettes of those that I need to transfer. So, and when I do, you know, they'll be on my YouTube channel eventually. But however, the funny thing is the most fond memory that I have of Alan Dawson, where I really learned something, ironically, was at a workshop that he gave at the University of New Orleans.
Okay.
He comes to New Orleans and gives this workshop, and he was asked about playing, and I always remember this because it was lining up with what I was getting into. Because I'm I don't know, 14, 15, and I'm already into music that's complex, music that's odd-metered, and there were things I was starting to understand, but there was a way that he phrased something that I hadn't thought of, and then it opened my ears up to some other possibilities. He was asked about playing with Dave Brubeck and soloing on Take 5, and which he did in the 1970s, and he told everybody, well, The problem with take five is that it's not really five, it's 3 and 2. And everything is on the downbeat. Could you imagine somebody playing in 4/4 like this, and he's at the drum kit, and he literally plays swing but crashes on the downbeat on every measure?
Right. It's lame. Yeah.
And I was like, damn, I never thought about it like that. He's right.
Yeah.
Oh, you know. And then my mind starts wandering. You know,
Mm.
yeah, because usually we resolve on the end of 4.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we can resolve on the end of 1. We can resolve on 2. You know,
Mm-hmm.
when drummers playing 5, they never resolve on the end of 5.
Mm-hmm.
Man, and now it's just my mind's just all over the place. After he said
Mm.
this one thing, and then he starts to demonstrate a solo in 5 where he's playing through the bar.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
right, yeah. And I hadn't thought about it across the bar, but I was hearing music like that. So it's
Yeah.
like that one moment opened up my ears to other possibilities.
That
So
that's crazy.
So yeah. So anyway, yeah. I mean, so I'm just saying. By then, high school, it's all kind of people there, all kind of drummers, different eras, different decades.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's where it goes all over the place, in a good way.
Well, that's incredible because I was when you mentioned Tane, um, we have a mutual acquaintance in Mondre Moffitt,
Oh yeah,
Trinette's
I
brother.
know
Yeah, he
Madre.
taught me at A&T. And Dre actually put me on to that record, Pontius Pilot's Decision, because at the time, like I was listening to a lot of Tane, and he was telling, he was like, "Have you heard this record with Jason?" And he's 14, and like, man, he's playing the heck out of the drums, man. And he played all of the big band kids. He played us that record, and we all were just like, "What the heck," right? And
Excuse me, real quick.
yeah,
If you
yes,
see Madre, ask him where's that video from Catalina's,
all right, I'm all
because
at him.
apparently he has a video from that time
Okay,
when we were of that band when we were at Catalina's. Apparently.
okay,
Yeah, like 92. Like apparently he had a video of it. Uh,
that's got to go up on YouTube, man.
so yeah, ask
That's a
him like, hey
dream.
man, where's that video?
Yeah,
But anyway, I
definitely.
didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
Well, no. That's right on. That's right on point because one of the things he was telling me to listen to in you was the way you were getting at like the different rhythmic figures. Cause that song, like, doesn't it have like a vamp section like in 11?
Yeah, it does.
And then it eventually goes into like the burning thing.
Yeah,
And yeah, and just the way that you were free and how you were getting to 11, saying what you just said about Alan Dawson and how that unlocked. Wait a second, I don't have to resolve on the downbeat. I can get at these other parts of the beat the same way that I get to it in 4/4. That makes now that makes a lot of sense to me. Um,
yeah.
let me ask you this.
Hmm.
So when you were dealing with Tane, I saw a clip on the Bloomington. I used to have a VHS of the Bloomington
Woo.
concert with
Oh
him,
yeah,
Rob Hurst, and your older
I
brother.
remember that well, and I got a story about how that album came out.
Okay, bet.
What's
Okay,
your
well,
question?
there's okay. Let me hear that. Let me hear that first. Then you were saying you got what's the story?
The story was this. So Delphio comes home.
Uh
I mean, he came to the house quite a bit because he lived in New Orleans. I remember he comes home and he has this cassette, and it's me and Daddy in the front room. He's like, "Daddy, what tune is this?" And he puts it on, and it's Branford, Bob, and Tane.
uh
Like, and Dad's listening, like, oh, ah. And he couldn't place it, but
uh
we're listening to it. I'm like, man, it sounds good, actually. And I think when it got near the end, Daddy's laughing. Oh yeah. Everything happens to me. Yeah, he's just cracking up laughing and so forth.
uh
And so then it's dawning on me. Wait a second. Hold on.
uh
The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born is not out
mm,
yet, but it's coming. It's going to be out in a few months. Is
okay.
that music live?
Mm,
Like that's what I'm thinking. And then
yeah.
and then Delphia says, "Yeah, man, it's this concert to be recorded. Yeah, I'm sure Jason will want a copy." Like, yeah.
Right.
And then I remember
Yeah.
him telling me, "Yeah, man, learn this thing Kane plays on." I think Citizen Kane. I said, okay, fine. So eventually he gets me a copy on cassette, and I'm like, man, this is cool, man. Put it on, and the first tune on the concert was Roustabout, and I was like, yeah, oh damn, yeah, this is cool, man. Cats are hitting.
Yeah.
And so then after that, Xavier's Lair starts.
Come on. Yeah.
It starts, and I'm like, yeah, damn.
Right.
Whoa. Because what's happening, for those who haven't heard this, like the record, and mind you, the record's still not out. It's like about like a month away or something.
Okay.
Or 2 weeks away. And so, the album version, which is great, but there's all these things that are happening, and like dynamic changes and mood change and rhythmic interaction. And you would think that it's this through composed piece, but it's not. It's all improvised.
Yeah,
and there's changes going on, and dynamic drops, and then groove changes, and rhythmic, and then the tempo changes, and then there's themes. And I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah,
I don't believe I'm hearing this.
Right.
And then they go up to and then Tane goes into this groove, which sounds like an African groove. And I'm like, damn, they're about to end this, aren't they? And they do. And I'm like, what the heck? This is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then it goes into Everything Happens to Me. And then it goes into, and I was listening at the tape at different points, because I think I was listening. Sometimes I'd listen to music at night, like in the bed.
Yeah.
And then like I'm falling asleep and trying to listen. And I think Citizen Kane's on. I fell asleep. And I was like, man. So the next day I said, well, the moment of truth is Citizen Kane, because the short version of the Citizen Kane is a tune that has a short form. But on the record, and this is to be candid, Jeff Tane Watts wasn't playing it right.
Okay.
He just wasn't.
Right.
Those trying to count it out. Man, what is going on? Wait. Oh, he's wrong, actually. There were just things he was missing. So I'm like, well, I got to hear. So, this is the end of Beautiful Ones, and Branford starts improvising. I was like, oh, Citizen Kane, cool, all right. And then Tane goes into this groove, and it's kind of a variation on a reggae groove. And I'm like, oh, this is different. All right. And then Branford comes in playing the bell. I was like, oh, okay. And they start playing, and I'm like, damn, this is like really hype. Now, I will admit, there's one thing that Tane got wrong. One thing, very small. Okay. But it's early in the tune, and I thought to myself, oh, not again. Not this again. But it was just one time, and after that, I was like, all right, fine. And they're in. Then Bob Hurst comes, I'm like, damn. And it just keeps going and going. I'm like, then they're in 5/4, which is not on the record, but it works with the form. And I'm like, oh, dear God, this is unreal. And then his solo ends, and then we get to the part where, where Bob drops out, but then Branford and Tane are playing, but then it turns into this stop time where Bob always resolves on one. And I'm like, man, none of this is on the record at all. And then next thing you know, Tane has a drum solo, but they're playing this one note on one. And I'm like, man, what? And I'm just dumbfounded, because I'm hearing all of this, but I'm understanding what's going on, but I'm still dumbfounded that this got recorded. Right. And then when they get to the top of that melody, that groove comes back. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't believe this. And then Branford's introducing the end, man. And so the tune ends. When that tune ended, I stopped the tape, got on the phone. Yo, this is Jason. I was just listening to Bloomington. This needs to be released tomorrow. I don't care that Branford's working on the blues record. This needs to come out right now. I'll talk to you later. Yeah. And Duff calls me back. Are you serious? Yes. Yeah. I get to my adamant, like, are you serious? Yes, I am. I was very adamant, like, because apparently, according to Del, when the concert happened, which he was there, I don't think he was fully paying attention, because he had a whole bunch of other stuff he was worried about, and so he kind of missed it when it was happening. And I think, I think Branford was like, man, what'd you think of that? Oh, man, it was all right, man. I thought y'all could fire it up some more. Some more? More than that? Oh, and he didn't really know. Yeah. So I called him like, no, they need to put that out now. Yeah. And then he heard it. Then he was like, man. I'm like, yeah. So anyway, that's how it eventually ended up being released. That was
Wow.
the start. Yeah.
Listen, for our audience, that is one of the hardest jazz records, period. And yeah, you just heard it from Mr. Marsalis, himself, like the
It's one,
background of that.
yeah, because it's one of those albums where I can understand it being a lot for a listener because it's just like the band just caught fire and they just start
Yeah,
improvising and they just go
yeah,
and they just keep going. They
yeah,
just were in this zone and it didn't stop for an hour.
exactly. Yeah,
It was just an hour long. Like my God, and I
yeah,
can understand the average person being like, "What's going on?"
right.
Uh, I can understand it being too much, but for me,
Mhm.
I was just floored. Like
Yeah,
this is fun. I don't believe all this got recorded because
yeah.
those are the kind of gigs you hear about that aren't
Hmm.
recorded.
Hmm. Wow, that's a valid point. There's a clip on the video that they did for that record where Tane is on the tour bus and
Yes,
he's sitting and he has like it's some sheet music with Elliott Carter and like he's shedding it with his feet. And when I saw that, I was like, yo, like, what planet is this guy from? Now, I remember whenever I hit you up for this interview, I was reminding you of a conversation that I had with you briefly at North Carolina Central, where you told me, I think it was like the Pratt. You were going through the Pratt with your feet. Like, um,
right.
talk to me. So two things. If you could talk to me a little bit about like what you've gleaned from Elliott Carter, and then like, yeah, man, your feet. Cause I was listening to this Marcus Roberts thing, man, and you doing some ignorant stuff with your feet, man. Like, so yeah, however you want to get to it.
Okay, well, a couple of things. One, I haven't checked out Elliott Carter extensively
Okay.
in terms of 20th century composers,
Hmm.
but I can tell you this.
Hmm.
I remember the first time that I heard Igor Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring, and it blew my mind. And I
Mm.
mean, there's all kind of complex rhythms going on,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
all sorts of
Sure.
things. And it was so funny because there came a point when in the middle of listening to that piece, I said, "Oh, this inspired Black Codes." Okay, like I could see the
You
correlation
can hear
between
it.
because I already
Yeah.
knew that they had checked out classical music.
Hmm.
I know that, but I was hearing it like, oh, I can see how this inspired music that Whitney and Bradford is playing now. And
Mm.
uh, and as far as Jeff Tain Watson classical music, there was a funny story that I heard from my father and from Delphia. They were in Pittsburgh and they met this classical percussionist, straight up classical percussionist.
Hmm.
And Delphio's bragging about Tane, and he's bragging about, and so Tane, the guy says, Tane, what kind of name is that? And Delph says, yeah, that's his nickname, Jeff Tane Watts. And the classical percussionist says, Jeffrey?
Jeffrey.
Jeffrey Watts is playing jazz?
I love it.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and I've heard other stories of like I think it was from Marcus Roberts where he walks in somewhere and Tane is shedding on Bach on marimba. And he's like, Tane, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot of
Shoot.
music that he studied that some folks aren't as aware of now. But so I mean, rhythmically speaking, there's a lot of things from like Stravinsky's music and from Bartok's music. You know,
Mhm.
Bartok's, what was it? Music for strings, percussion, and celeste. That was another moment where, I heard these five rhythms and I said, oh yeah, Black Codes. There's that again. You
Uh-huh.
know.
Uh-huh.
And then not long after that, Winton was at the house for something and he saw I had that. He's like, oh man, Concerto for Orchestra is killing. Man, that's one of the that's one of the greatest pieces of the 20th century. Like Winton got all
Come on.
excited. And I was
Yeah.
like, well, okay, that confirms that.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
oh man, music for strings, percussion, and celeste. He was all excited that I was like, yeah, this is killing. I mean, I was all about it, but it
Uh-huh.
was just funny to have him confirm that. So,
Mm.
but so yeah, I mean, there's all the classical music stuff that we've all heard in different things. But now, as far as the feet, one of the things that, and I need to do this more often, but I have done practicing with like just basic, like, hold on, I'm going to stand. Well, you can't see it, never mind. Where
Uh,
I'll like practice paradiddles with the feet, like right, left, right, left, right, left, right, right, left, right, right, left. You know what? Hold on. Let me just do this real quick. I'm sorry for this.
No, that's all good. I'm with it.
Like for example,
Okay.
like right, left, right, left, right. Like playing paradiddles with the feet,
Uh-huh.
like that. I mean, I don't have my shoes on, but and just things like that, playing them together. And then maybe doing something in the hands with that. And I used to have a double bass drum pedal. I
Mm-hmm.
don't now, but I need to get one back because it's just good for the feet because you have to use them. And when you
Mm-hmm.
practice with your feet like that, it helps with your sound. Yeah.
In what
Now,
way?
yeah, well, just you're dealing with attack. That's the thing. You're dealing with when you deal with this, that's like a form of attack. When you
Ah,
deal with this, it's like a form of attack. So when you go to playing on the hi-hat and the bass drum, that's the thing.
hmm
It refines your attack and it refines your sound.
brilliant.
So now another thing that I started to experiment with was displacing the bass drum and the hi-hat, which
Okay.
that was one of these crazy high school practice moments. Like, let
Okay.
me try this. And so, for example, where I'm soloing and playing, like, feet are going, tap, 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 and then I'll experiment with like Tame would do a thing where he would play upbeat swing.
Uh-huh.
And what that is, instead of dang, tang, dang, tang, he played tang, tang, tang,
Thank you.
tang, tang,
Yeah,
tang, tang,
like
tang,
on the
right?
end of he does it on Friday the
Yes,
13th
he
on the Bloomington
does.
record. Uh-huh.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does that. So then mind is wandering like, what if the feet were on the other side of the beat?
What the heck?
So then it's like pop, pop, tap, tap, get it, tap, get it, pop, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, things like that. You know, and then like the whole like third above the time concept that guys where what they would do is they would take if they were like here and they would play a so 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1. But what happens is you're playing in like the ride cymbal if the bass drum is here. 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 take it 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 take it. And at a certain point I said, what if I reverse the roles? Ding, take it, 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 Then I'm like, what if I soloed like this? Is what mine just starts wandering.
Yeah,
What if
yeah,
I
yeah.
soloed like that? Catch it, catch it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, but the feet are going like that.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
there's other ways that I've done that. Like if the tempo is here and I'm playing and then the feet starts playing like dotted quarter notes or third below the time.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Like 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1. But the feet are like this. Boom. But the time is up here. So I've done things like that.
Yeah.
So it was a very informal demonstration. But
That's gold. Thank you
but
so much.
but
That's
yeah,
gold.
but I have done a lot of that with the feet, where I try to if I'm playing dotted quarter notes in the hands and then quarter notes in the bass drum, I'm
Mm-hmm.
like dotted quarter notes in the bass drum and then quarter notes in the hands.
Mm-hmm.
I'm reversing things of that nature. And then
Mm.
let me try to solo over that over a form. Oh dear God, what have I done now?
Right.
Oh well,
Right.
all right. So yeah, so with the feet, I have done those types of things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a really killing video of you playing with Marcus Roberts.
Mm-hmm.
And I forget the song right now. I may play this for our listeners, but the third thing that you were talking about, like modulating, speeding things up by a third, like you started,
Yeah.
like you're keeping. It's a pretty medium tempo song, and you're blowing with your hands at the tempo of the song, but your feet are like a third faster. And I was just like, and you're playing like the feathering, like you're feathering with your right foot, and
Right.
you're playing the sock on 2 and 4, but because it's in 6, like it's like overlapping,
Right.
and it's just yeah, man. I was like, that's just off the chain to me. Like I love that stuff.
Oh yeah, I'm not even sure what that is. I know it's happened. I just can't place it. Was this like a live concert?
Uh-huh. 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 Yeah. In fact, give me 1 second to get situated
I
because I,
wonder
I
if that,
really think that the people need to hear that.
I wonder if that was the concert, man, that was in Burlington.
You says where?
I wonder if that was the concert in Burlington, the Burlington Jazz Festival.
Mm, let's see
Yeah.
here. This
Or
is
unless,
on yeah, yeah, you said Burlington, like Vermont?
yeah,
Yeah, this has got to be it because it's on the Vermont public YouTube
yeah,
page.
yeah, that was a
And
fun concert.
yeah, man, you put your foot in this double entendre. Like, if we could just take a moment and just dig this.
One of the funniest things that didn't get filmed,
Okay.
and it was a shame it didn't get filmed because I know folks would have said, "No, there's no way they're doing that," and I'm like, "Yes, we are." We were
Uh-huh.
we were playing Where When, and we actually started quoting "Controversy" by Prince. I kid you not, like all of us, like we're playing the tune, and Mark is
uh,
like, "Do do 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 do."
right.
You know,
Yo, wow.
controversy, but there's no words, and we're just quoting it all together. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh no, there's no film, damn it. But
Uh,
anyway, I remember that night being fun. That was a really fun night.
I dig. Yeah, I encourage everybody to check it out on YouTube because it's you, it's Rodney Jordan on
Yeah,
bass, and it's obviously Marcus Roberts on piano.
yeah.
And yeah, man, y'all are getting to some stuff. Let me ask you this with because y- you've inherited so much from Tane in a sense with your gig with by playing with Marcus because obviously Quentin Wynton had his quartet with
Yeah,
it was Wynton, Bob, and it was Marcus on piano and it was Tane on
yeah.
drums. Like, what was that like you get the gig in Marcus's trio after he's made all of this history with your older brother and that group, and it happens to be like the drummer that you know what I'm saying, like you love and you look up to. Like, what is that like?
That's an interesting question because by the time I joined Marcus's group, um, things had changed because now you're right because Jeff Tain Watts had played with Wynton with Marcus Roberts, but then it
Mm-hmm.
was after that Wynton changed groups and he started doing Majesty of the Blues, which was different music, and
Yes.
Tain started playing with Branford, and so and then Marcus started to make his records, and so when I got to Marcus, I mean, part of it, I think that I wasn't thinking as much about the history of that honestly because it
Okay.
was people I knew. And so it's
I did.
different if it's people you knew. It's different. I'm not, in fact, I think one day I was thinking, in fact, at some point, and I got to remember this, okay, like take the drummer Herlin Riley. Like I've been knowing Herlin for years.
Uh-huh.
And at some point, next time I see Herlin, I got to remember and ask him, we never discussed the album The Majesty of the Blues.
Uh-huh.
Like never.
Right.
And part of it was I in the summer of '89 I saw Wynton's band and I remember hearing that Herlin got the gig and I knew well Wynton's music is going to change. So that's what I mean. When you know people, you're not thinking about, hey man, what was happening on the? I'm not thinking about that. I know the
Yeah.
person who's on the outside. Yeah, they're going to have questions and they should. So
Yes.
with Marcus, I wasn't even thinking about that because I knew Marcus since I was a kid, and we'd
Uh-huh.
see each other off and on. And Marcus was playing with my father, and he even asked my father, "Man, I want to hire Jason." His dad said, "No, not now," which he
Mhm.
was right. I was 14. I wouldn't have been
Uh-huh.
ready for that. But so I wasn't thinking about that. But when I got to Marcus's group, things had changed because he was playing trio, and
Mm-hmm.
he was the album he just released was Gershwin for Lovers.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think it was like destined to be because I remember when that album came out and I was at Tower Records back when that was a thing. And I
Mm-hmm.
think they put it on or something. I was like, sounds like Marcus. Yes, he has a new record out. And then I go, oh, Marcus does have a oh, he's on Columbia now. Okay. You know what I mean? So
Uh-huh.
I ended up getting the record. And so when Marcus called me to play with him, one of the things that surprised him was
Mm-hmm.
when he said, yeah, we're going to be doing music from my newest record, Gershwin for Lovers. Yeah, I have that. Oh.
Yeah.
He didn't
You
expect
were
that because
prepared.
it was brand new. I was like, yeah, I got
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
have that one already. But I'll review it and make sure that I know the music.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it was changing because he was into trio and he wanted to develop a trio sound. And
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, I was checking out about Ball and Oscar Peterson,
Wow.
so it worked out. But he wanted to do different things with the trio. And I remember this one moment in rehearsal,
Mm-hmm.
and I immediately understood it. We were playing, and we did get to some heat, man, on this blues. And I remember him
Okay.
saying, "Well, that's cool, man, but this doesn't have to be a live at Blues Alley thing." And when he said that, I said, "Oh, that's right. He wants to move on to something else.
Mm.
That's cool."
Yeah.
And it was cool. I understood it.
That.
Yeah, it was just that moment. He wanted to do something else. And so
Mm-hmm.
we started venturing into trio music, which honestly, some of that music I would like to redo, honestly,
Okay.
because he was into thematic playing as a trio, and it was a new concept, and I wasn't as familiar with it or how to really improvise in that style. But as years went on and the sound got better and better and more mature,
Mm-hmm.
then it grew into the sound that we have now.
Could you break that down? You said thematic
Yeah. So
piano? Uh-huh.
for example, Marcus was not interested in playing music where he was interested in playing the swing based music, but not where you play a melody and then solo.
Okay.
What he wanted to do was have music that had themes that you would play throughout the piece.
Ah.
And you know, like for example, in the time and circumstance piece, he
Mm-hmm.
has this melody do 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 dee do dee, and so we would use that as a cue. I'll use that as part of the solo,
Mm-hmm.
or he'll have melodies and we'll refer to that. But I think that honestly, some of the ways that I would refer to those themes was like kind of contrived.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was kind of meaning like we were just kind of making a point. Oh, let's reference this right now, and not
Right.
you're naturally hearing it.
Right.
It was just kind of
It was
contrived.
forced. I
Yeah.
did well, but I mean, you survived that first wave. But you're saying that, you want another go at it because now you've matured in your concept and
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah, that's all. I
Yeah.
mean, the thing is that when musicians were playing a lot, I mean, they would always revisit things.
Yes.
I mean, think of the different times Duke Ellington played "Take the A Train" through the years, and the way that would change. Or Miles Davis playing "My Funny Valentine" at 55, they playing it again in 64, and they're not the
Yes.
same. So,
Yes.
yeah. So that's why I think we could redo it and do it even better.
I dig. Well, hopefully y'all will get to that because that's going to be a game changer. Um, in terms of artistry and uh, I reckon we can get ready to wind things down. I
Mhm.
appreciate you doing this because this has been incredible. The comment section has been going off. Um, and let me say this. Let me do like the whole moderator piece. I encourage everybody. I'm about to post in the comment section all of Jason's social media. Uh, I didn't know that your TikTok page was popping like that. Like that, your
Yeah.
TikTok page is off the chain. It is a treasure trove of just dope information. Period.
Yeah.
Like,
What's funny about that page? That it's weird, man. I don't know. I'm trying to remember like what even gave me the idea to even join that site, and I can't remember what it was. I remember hearing about TikTok and like, what's this app? Okay, and then hearing that musicians were on it. And I thought, well, maybe
mhm,
I need to get on that. And then I don't know, it was little bits of things. I think I'd found out, that you had folks that were sometimes they may get money for doing things, but I asked a musician, great vibraphonist, Justin Vibes. And I was like, hey
mhm,
man, like you're on there. What is that about? And we had a conversation about this. We had a
mm,
conversation about what it is and how, man, he was telling me the difference between Instagram and TikTok. If you go on TikTok, man, the videos can go anywhere and so forth. And so
mhm,
I said, you know what? I'll join and see what happens. And so I made the first video. It was at a studio where it was like an introductory video. Like,
mhm.
hi, I'm Jason Marsalis. It's time for TikTok to swing. And I start playing and
Yeah.
stop. And I post the video. So I was like, all right. So I posted it. I was just kind of checking. And then I checked in and it was like 1,000 followers. Like,
Yeah.
quick. Like, damn, this cat was right.
Yeah.
And the comments were funny because the first comments were like, wait, the Jason Marsalis? Like,
Yeah.
No way. I'm like, yeah, it's me. Are you related to Winton? Yeah, yes, I am. Yeah, it was really
Right.
interesting. And then I started finding out. But what happened was it became a different version of improvisation and a different
Mm,
version of what you can do with an app and what it is that you can create. So,
yeah.
and then how that can get better. Because
Mm.
like I start discovering other people. I had an interesting generational gap that I didn't understand,
Mm.
but now I do. So
Mm-hmm.
there was
Mm-hmm.
this young vocalist who posted this weird video. It got to me because their For You page, anything comes your way.
Yeah, exactly.
And so
Yeah.
I'm not going to say the concept, but it was like a weird video, and it ends up with her singing like I don't know, it was one of those bebop tunes, and I was like, what the hell? And all I commented was, "Alrighty then." And then she responds. And what I didn't realize, what I realized later was that
Uh,
I don't think that video was meant for me. I think that
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
was meant for like friends in high school and friends in college. And I think that the fact that I saw it, I think kind of shocked this young lady.
That's real. Yeah. Yeah.
And she was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh, hi, Mr. Marsalis.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that, and I didn't understand that at the time because all this stuff was new. But in later times, I think, oh, okay, I get it now. I mean, it's fine,
Uh,
but it was just an interesting thing. But as time went on, I started to realize how to use the app and
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like things that at first I was just playing music, but then I realized, oh, I can like comment on people's videos and stitch to stories, and one breakthrough came oddly enough when there was a guy that was on live, and I wasn't doing that yet. And so some
Okay.
gentleman, real big Missy, super cool. He
Mm-hmm.
goes on live and he's playing these records, and he's playing, most of them I knew, some of them I didn't. And there was this one time where he puts on Sun Goddess, Ramsey Lewis. And
Okay.
so when he plays that, I'm on my phone typing. I said, I have a great story that involves Ramsey Lewis.
Yeah.
And I'm telling him this story, but I'm trying to type it so it's live. And so we're not like on live like we are right now. It's just me,
Uh,
but he knows who I am.
uh,
So I'm typing and I'm trying to type this story and he's reading it. And then other people are also commenting. He's like, shut up, Jason. I'm trying to read it. So I'm telling this whole thing about Ramsey Lewis and this
uh,
whole story. And I'm like, yeah, Ramsey Lewis was in New Orleans, late 1960s.
mm-hmm.
And my father was at the gig. And I'm typed in Dexter. And the drummer was on the gig and he had given the band 2 weeks notice. Send. I'm telling this whole story and
Yeah.
I'm trying
Just.
to read
Yeah.
it.
Just.
And I'm trying to type fast. And the drummer said that he was going to leave the band and go to LA and form his own band and so forth. Years later, what was it? I said my father heard this record and I'm typing it. And then he's like, what happened to the drummer? And then
Mm-hmm.
I ended it. And then Branford shows the record cover of an album called Open Our Eyes. And my father sees this and says, look at Maurice. And the
Wow.
guy laughs. And he's like, you mean to tell me Maurice White was in Ramsey? Yes.
wow.
But
Earth,
that
Wind, and
was
Fire.
the
Yeah.
story. The story was my father did hear Ramsey Lewis's group, and Maurice White was the drummer. And this
Uh-huh.
was and Ramsey's told a story because I'm sure it went on for 2 weeks, where Maurice
Okay.
said, "I'm going to leave. I'm going to go to LA, and me and my brothers going to form this band.
Mm-hmm.
Verdine, we going to form this band,
Yeah.
and it's going to have
Yeah.
jazz and Latin." And they were like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." And so it was, and I heard from Branford, he bought, and this is 73, I think. And he buys the Earth, Wind, and Fire album, Open Our Eyes. It was the first album when they started to rise on the charts.
Okay.
In fact, the song Mighty Mighty, it was funny. I was playing it for Marcus Roberts, and it was a deep moment. He said, damn, I remember that from the radio. I didn't know it was them.
Wow.
Because they were rising, but they weren't. They were almost. The very next album was That's the Way of the World. That's when they officially blew up.
Yeah.
Shining
Mm-hmm.
Star, Reasons, now they're superstars.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
Branford puts on Open Our Eyes, and Dad's like, wow, that sounds good.
Uh-huh.
Man, what's that? Branford's this band, Earth, Wind, and Fire. Man, let me see that. And so the band is on the cover,
Yeah.
and in the center was Maurice White. And Dad saw it, and he just started cracking up. And he's like, oh, man, look at Maurice. Look at Maurice.
That's
Branford's
lit.
like, Branford, who's Maurice? How does he know? Branford's all confused, and then I think Dad's just laughing. Maurice did it, he's just laughing.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I've told that whole story to say that I realized, wait a minute, I can use TikTok to tell this story. And so I did a video, I was just in my car, and I told that story. It had a lot of views.
Yeah.
And I realized that I could use the app to tell stories like that.
That's good.
I would even like sometimes duet people, videos, people to tell other stories about music, you know, and then use it to tell. And then there were other guys that I would connect with, and then I would sometimes, their videos might inspire a story.
Yeah.
Like this one guy who's a DJ played one of Wynton's records, and he said, and I think he asked, find the sample, do you hear it? And I just commented, well, I got a story here. I can't wait to hear it. So I told a story, and I realized I could use that app to tell stories. And so there is a lot there that is about music and about stories that I've had, things I've learned. A lot of times it'll be inspired by a comment. And then somebody will comment something, and I'm like, oh, I got a story about that. And now what I'm doing, I'm starting to cross post. I'm like, I might create something on TikTok, but then I'll share it on Instagram and share it on YouTube. So like there was a recent video where and it was a video that was with me and Wynton in it, and it was taken by Wynton's photographer, his social media person, Luigi Vivarelli. Yeah. So it was this video, and it was just a video with me and Wynton playing. But what I did, you can create text, and I used the text to tell this story about. Yep, we did this rehearsal, and we get there, and there's no drum set.
Yeah, you were having to play on the stand. Yeah.
Got to play. So I had to find something, and it was funny because we show up, and it's like, man, I'm not worried about Jason. He'll play on anything.
Yeah.
And as he's saying that, I'm like trying to find something. Oh, they got a music stand. Oh, this will work, man. Let's go.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I use the TikTok and I'm starting to cross post it other places, but I use it to tell stories or thoughts I've had or discoveries I've had about music. So that's what I'm doing with it. And I'm going to do some of those videos you're going to start seeing like on Instagram and YouTube. But with TikTok, it's like a different way of teaching is what I figured out.
Wow.
Another way of passing on the music. And so there's a lot of things that people don't know and they learn from that, you know, and I have other stories. I mean, so, you know, behind the scene things that they maybe didn't know, I'll do that. So I've been using it as a tool for passing on the music, if you will.
Yes, well, I that's totally what I peeped because going through your different platforms, I was like, wow, this is like you're like a postmodern griot. You know what I mean? Yeah, man, and well, I think I'll end it here, but thank you so much, man, because you have answered so many of my questions, and then, like I said, the comment section, the entire conversation, people have been like jumping in. I've seen some really hit people like Tyshawn Sorey was here. Some other cats like we got a mutual acquaintance and Ernest Turner. Shout out to Ern. It's a bad brother. It's a lot of really hit people that have jumped into the conversation and they've been edified and strengthened and clarity has been given by the brilliant things you've been saying. And so in closing, thank you. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to this conversation in rhythm with Mr. Jason Marsalis. I posted all of your social media. I posted your website in the comment section. I'll do that again. And until the next time, everybody, keep swinging.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned the website. I have to update that.
I did.
I will shortly.
Yeah.
But thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, sir. All right now.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.